I was having a conversation with someone that I'd met just recently, and we were talking about photography, and they asked me, what else do you do that's creative? And so I talked about wood carving, I talked about baking, I talked about gardening, and realized, yeah, all these things that I do that are creative, I can say that they're in my blood. These things are not just a hobby, they're not just a habit, they weren't just an occupation with my photography. It is, my real essence is who I am as a creative person, and I believe that these things can be gifts to us, that just the pure nature of being creative isn't something that comes only from us. I can believe that it is in our blood, that it is inspired by the generations that have come before us and contributed to who we are. And yeah, this idea of being in the blood, the Greeks, like thousands of years back, considered that the bodily fluids, our blood, our bile, our phlegm, made up the personality and the health of a person. And then during the Middle Ages, the concept of a bloodline, where you came from, who your relatives were, who your ancestors were, really shaped who we are. They built into us leadership and bravery and skills and things like this. And these things were passed down from one generation to the next. And certainly in times past, when schools weren't there, sons used to follow on in the footsteps of their fathers. Somebody that was a farmer would be a farmer. Somebody that would be a blacksmith would be a blacksmith because his father was a blacksmith, and like this. So this then just comes through not just our bloodline, but also integrated very much into our society. And of course, nowadays, this has changed somewhat in society, but I don't believe that it's changed in our bloodline. I believe that a lot of us have kind of lost sight of it somehow. And as I said, I do baking. I love baking bread. This is something I've done for a long time, as is gardening, as is the enjoyment I have with working with wood, and as is photography. And photography in particular, I know, came directly from my dad. This is his original camera. This is his first camera, and this is the first camera that I ever put a full roll of film through. I've still got it too. And it's just really special that this is something that I really enjoyed as a kid. When Dad would pull this out, it was really a special occasion. It wasn't just like whipping out your cell phone and taking a couple of quick snapshots. It was, yeah, something that happened on special occasions or in special situations. So it was very, very precious to me. As I grew older and I learned more about photography and it became my profession, I also learned a little bit more about my family history on my mum's side, that my great-grandfather, Frederick Cooper, was a photographer. He was actually the first person to photograph Mount Cook, which is New Zealand's highest mountain. I got to see some of these images last time I was in New Zealand at the Ashburton Museum, and it was such a thrill to see that this was my heritage, that this is where my ancestors came from, and that it is literally in my blood, that these things are very real to me. As is working with wood, I love wood carving, and my dad was a carpenter and a cabinet maker. He was so skilled with his hands and so gifted at working with wood, and it's something that I've picked up on a bit later in life. And also baking. My friend tasted some of the bread that I'd baked recently. He said, wow, where did you learn to do this? From YouTube? I said, some of it from YouTube, but mostly from my mum. And my mum's father, my granddad, he was also a baker. This was his occupation. So it really is in me. And then gardening as well. Both my parents were gardeners. And I will imagine that on both sides of my family, there's probably been gardeners for as long as we've had breath. So yeah, that's very, very much built into us. And the other thing, the other creative aspect that is in me, that is part of who I am, that I believe has come down through generations, is my faith and my spirituality, and this is something that is so deeply within me that I can't imagine that it would be separate from my bloodline. It's in my blood, it's in my DNA, if you like. I fully believe that we are created to be creative. We're creative beings, and inherently this is in our nature. Let me encourage you to, if you haven't discovered what your creative gifting is, if you like, check out your ancestry. What did your parents enjoy doing? What did your grandparents enjoy doing as creative endeavors, as creative input in their lives, or creative productively in their lives? What were they doing? You might be surprised, or maybe not, to find that you'll discover your gifting and the way it is already within you. And it could be a little bit hard to imagine, but if you really work into it, you'll be able to see what your gifting is, what your talent is to be creative, and how you can continue in this rich heritage that no doubt is also in your family. Who is it in your family that's gifted, that is creative, that you are inspired by, or maybe you don't know you're inspired by them, but it might be in your blood? Check it out. It's really fascinating. And if you'd like to look at a little bit more about what I've done recently with my carving, you can check out this video next. Thanks very much for watching.